Hello everyone, my name is Maruku and welcome back to What If Deku Had Alien Powers. So let's get started. Izuku is about 13 years old when he receives a present from his grandfather. Now this present is the actual ability to take samples from people and create an alien out of it. Since Izuku has been dealing with the fact that his grandfather has been the one to actually give him new aliens that are from some of his old hero buddies. Now Izuku, having known that he can now do it himself, basically get samples from anyone he wants and create an alien out of it, it sounds rather nice. It sounds rather enjoyable. Izuku can't wait to have himself the ability to get more aliens. Over the large span of time between then and now, he has become very accustomed to all of his aliens. He's become incredibly agile with each of them, has gone into great depth into how their powers work and exactly how to use them at their best. On top of getting a couple of extra aliens here and there, Izuku has just become the best he can be. He's maximized all of his output, and he couldn't be the happier, especially since it's his grandfather who made all this stuff just for him, so that his dreams could be possible. Now I'm going to skip forward about a year, when Deku is in the middle of his middle school. The teacher basically tells all the students, well, everyone, I was going to give you a career aptitude test, but who am I kidding? I know you all want to be heroes. And he throws papers in the air and everyone is showing off. But, mind you, that's kind of counterintuitive because none of them exactly have a interesting quirk. And the teacher tells them, settle down, and announces to the class that their very own Izuku and Bakugo are applying to take the UA entrance exam. And everyone is in awe. But on the other hand, they're kind of confused about the whole Izuku thing because at this point, they believe he still doesn't have a quirk. Mostly because Izuku made a promise to his grandfather to keep the whole omnitrix thing a secret, especially since it would be very dangerous in the hands of anyone else who would want to steal it for themselves, especially since the device will self-destruct if removed from Izuku's body physically. Now, Izuku, through the fact that his grandfather permitted it, did tell Bakugo about the watch, but mostly for the fact that Izuku is now able to have Bakugo actually train with him, like, using the watch, allowing both Izuku and Bakugo to heighten their physical prowess and their technical abilities, giving them the edge they need to get into the school. Now, on the other hand, Izuku did make sure that Bakugo understood that it is a secret and that they can't be talking about it publicly until at least they get into UA, where talking about it as much won't be as much of a risk since they're, hero students. But, they all end up with Bakugo basically telling them that they're all gonna be lucky to go with a busted D-lister, and all of them getting pissed off before Bakugo just kind of continues to mock them and tell them that they're nothing, and that they aren't even worth, it, that he'll take them all on. And I'll say that Izuku, over the years, technically has had an effect on Bakugo, making him more chilled out and less aggressive. Though Bakugo does still have a streak of being protective over his friend, because it's not fair to him to have to be ridiculed for something that's not even his fault. Especially when you put into perspective that Izuku, technically does have powers now, it's just he can't talk about it openly. Now, as soon as school lets out and all, Bakugo says to Izuku, hey, you want to go to the arcade? And Izuku says, I'm sorry, bro, I can't. I promised Grandpa that I'd go to training so that I could learn how to properly use the sample effect on the watch to the best of my abilities. And Izuku's like, okay, I guess I'll just see you later then. And they part ways, right? Well, Izuku, he gathers all his stuff and he ends up going towards towards his house, where he's going to eventually be met with the fact that he's going to have to deal with his grandfather. He's heading back to his house where he's going to get his training stuff, that way that he can meet with his grandfather at the training facility. And as Izuku's getting there, or making his way there, he thinks to himself, shoot, I really need to hurry up. I can't afford to take forever, especially since Grandpa has been cracking the whip lately, getting me to work really hard and make sure that I'm at my best before the entrance exam. But as it goes on, Izuku finally sees a underpass and thinks to himself, perfect, this will definitely get me the ability to get to the house faster. And as he's going under the underpass, he starts to hear a noise come from under him. And he's like, what in the world? And then from behind him, he hears someone say, I didn't know that freak was in town. And when Izuku turns around, he is met by an amorphous, disgusting, blobbing sludge that encompasses the whole area, which, mind you, kind of grosses Izuku out, because he's like, ugh, gross, come on, that's nasty. Why in the world is there a sludge creature here? That's gross. But Izuku, after inspecting his surroundings, right, thinking to himself, how am I going to get out of this? Because obviously this isn't a ideal situation. He remembers the fact that he can't exactly fight back because of his promise to not reveal himself or the watch, his existence, but he's kind of in a sticky situation, so he kind of doesn't have a choice, right? Well, as he's hitting the button to start the changing sequence, he starts to run, but before he can actually pick out an alien, this sludge creature, it jumps onto him and starts wrapping around his body before trying to shovel its way into his mouth, his nose, his ears, anywhere it can to get inside of his body. And the sludge monster basically says, come on, kid, don't be difficult. Just let me use your body. You'll really be my hero if you do. And as Izuku is struggling, right, Izuku begins to writhe around, hoping and praying that he can get out of this situation alive, if any. And while he's sitting there praying to himself, hoping that this can work, he ends up looking around, hearing his watch make a noise. And once he looks up towards the watch, he hears it say, DNA sample has been acquired. Analyzing substance. And the sludge villain, he looks over and he hears it say this, and he's like, what in the hell is this thing? And while he's not paying attention to Izuku, more occupied with whatever this thing that Izuku is wearing said, he accidentally bumps the watch after essentially giving Izuku what he needs to get a new alien. And he's like, "What is this thing on your wrist, kid?" But as he's observing the watch says, "New alien has been acquisitioned. Ready to use?" And the sludge villain bumps into the watch, accidentally triggering it, and Izuku then starts to feel his body shift and lose mass. Or more precisely, solidity. All of these solids in his body begin to slime out and sludge, just kind of becoming oozy as this metal trinket starts to buzz around from up above. As Izuku's body turns entirely to slime, this metal thing links to on top of where his genuine body should have been, and it pulls him out from the sludge villain's grasp. And he's like, "What the hell? How'd you escape? Better question, how is it that you changed?" But before Izuku could make any further protest as to what's happening, he quickly hits the watch symbol on the metal device, causing him to transform back to his original self. And he goes, "Well, technically I'm not the one who triggered the watch, so I might as well work with it." And he shifts it over to another alien before hitting it down. The alien he has selected for this occasion happens to be Arctiguana. And the moment that Izuku turns into Arctiguana, the sludge villain charges towards him once more, but Izuku ends up vomiting the frosted substance all over the sludge villain, causing it to solidify and become a frozen slime that is now stuck in place. Izuku is rather enjoying the ability to, I guess you could say, ruin the sludge villain's attempt at a escape. But just as Izuku managed to get out a sigh of relief, the manhole cover that was under the bridge, about a couple yards away from this whole situation, had blown up off of the rim, and out crawled a man with long blonde strands of hair. He yells, "No need to fear, 'cause I am..." Oh. Well, Usually this is the part where I usually save someone, but it appears that you've immobilized this villain? And Izuku, after seeing All Might, he's like, "What?" He's freaking out. He's unsure of what to do. I mean, it's the All Might. You don't just suddenly expect to wake up in the morning and your idol be right there in front of you. Hell, you don't expect to see an idol of yours in public. Most people would be completely agape to see something so bizarre, or what could be considered to them abnormal. Now, Izuku, trying to keep his composure, he proceeds to look at All Might and say, "Mr. All Might, I'm sorry. I was trying to defend myself, but I kind of had to use my powers." And All Might's like, "Well, I'm not exactly a fan of having people use their quirks openly in public, but due in part that the Safety Commission has been working tirelessly to figure out whether or not they are going to pass any kind of rules against self-defense, I only see it right to let you off with a warning, especially since it's not entirely your fault. Just remember, vigilantism is not the right way in life. it's still illegal. I can understand because you were defending yourself. Just be more mindful from now on, young man. And Izuku, he bows his head low and he says, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to do the wrong thing. I was just trying to protect myself. And All Might's like, no problem, young man. And before All Might can continue further, Izuku asks him to sign his notebook, and he does. Before, basically, Izuku and All Might collect all the pieces of the sludge villain that are there, and All Might begins to carry it off. Since to make it easier, All Might broke the shards into bigger clumps. That way he could carry it in a couple of his bags, a couple of those store bags for easier transportation. This also eliminating the possibility of the sludge villain escaping. Now Izuku, he does proceed to look around and take stock of the whole situation. He's like, whew, I was not expecting to see All Might today. Hell, I wasn't expecting to get saved by one of my favorite heroes. Wow. But Izuku, after kind of composing himself, right, he looks down at the ground and he sees what looks like blood. He's like, that sludge villain didn't cut me. Is that from All Might? And Izuku, he activates the sample taker part of the watch and he sticks it into the blood. And the blood gets transported onto a generous amount of the tip of the needle attached to the watch. And the watch starts to analyze it before saying, error. Multiple quirk signatures acquired. And Izuku was like, multiple? All Might has super strength. Why is it multiple? Then the watch finally says, acquisition. 1 out of 7 quirks available. Acquisitioning first alien. And it creates the alien, which, when Izuku looks at it, like the outline of the creature, it looks like it has 2 long tassels coming from the top of its head out in a weird fashion, which Izuku thinks maybe some kind of electrical thing, but why would it be electrical? All Might has super strength. And then the watch announces, more DNA samples required to acquisition more aliens. And Izuku thinks, well, shoot. I can't exactly ask All Might for more of his blood now. He's already left. And I'm pretty sure having the blood be only barely wet in the dirt isn't exactly helping my case. Shoot. But Izuku then remembers that he had a training session with his grandfather. So he quickly hightails it back to his house to get his training gear before running all the way to the training facility where he meets his grandfather. And he basically tells his grandfather about all the things that happened, like how he met All Might, how he was forced to use his powers because of the fact that he was attacked by a villain, and so on and so forth. Now, his grandfather didn't exactly reprimand him for what happened. He was kind of okay with it. He was chill. Didn't really lecture Izuku very much, but told him that he needs to be more careful of his surroundings and needs to really work on his social awareness as to more accurately avoid getting himself into more of a pickle. Now Izuku ends up going into the watch and looking through all the different aliens, right? Like the slimy one and the new one he got from All Might. He also kind of explains to his grandfather what happened with All Might, and his grandfather says, "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing. He must have accidentally got cut by another villain before he got to the scene. It's fine, Izuku. There's nothing to worry about." But I must say, 7 different aliens coming from one person's blood sample? I never expected the watch to be able to pull 7 different quarks or aliens in that way. Must be a glitch. And Izuku thinks, yeah, you might be right. But basically Izuku, he goes over to this new alien, right? And another key function of the sample detector is that it also installs a alien description function, whereas the watch will basically detail what the alien does and how its powers work, so that it can better allow Izuku the opportunity and ability to understand the alien, understand how its powers work, and understand how to utilize it to its full capacity. Now, Izuku basically scrolls to this new creature in his watch, and he hits it, and his body shifts around until he looks like a black creature that has metal wires coming out of him. And he has plugs at the tip of each of his fingers, with like a white strand coming around his shoulders and creating a whole white patch down his stomach. And Izuku's like, whoa, what kind of creature is this? And the watch announces, this creature has the ability to feed off of energy and direct it back at its source. And Izuku, he's intrigued by this. He's like interested in experimenting with this, and he asks his grandfather to set up one of the flame drones to see if he can truly take any kind of energy, whether that be the energy of fire or anything else, and see how it deflects, right? Well, Izuku, he manages to like have a real burst of fire come at him, and he instinctively puts his left hand out, and the fire gets absorbed into the plugs in his left hand, and Izuku shoots out an electric jolt out of his right hand using the same energy-based like composition back at the source, which Izuku is impressed by. He's like, whoa, now that is power. And this leads Izuku to finally getting himself trained up, experimenting with all of these different things, right? Different effects, different everything. The basic premise of this is the fact that Izuku wants to bring out his full power and bring it to fruition, which it is, and Izuku is learning incredibly fast. Now, I'm going to say that for the next 10 months, Izuku, he practices as much as he can, and he takes a sample off of Bakugo, since he finally got around to asking Bakugo if it's cool, and Bakugo said, yeah, it's cool. And he ends up sticking the needle into Bakugo and taking a sample, this giving Izuku the access to an alien that is partially ready, but by taking a sample from an old alien and mixing it with the sample from Bakugo, it has fused together to create a new one. It mixes Wildvine's abilities with an explosive ability, giving birth to Swamp Fire. And Izuku's like, oh, now that's nice. Now that is really, really nice. And Izuku, he's practiced with this for a long time now, having finally gotten the ability to obtain a power from his best friend and now use it to his advantage. Izuku practices with Bakugo non-stop for the next 10 months, preparing the both of them for the UA entrance exam. Whereas Izuku, having gone through all that training, all that work, right, he manages to finally go off, and after all the time has passed and Izuku has gotten himself to a point where he's extremely confident in his skills, he sets off to the UA entrance exam to polish off his skills and see what he can make of it, you know. And as he's going along towards the exam, he feels himself confident, especially since he's got his best friend who is also confident in his abilities going with him. They've both trained really hard to make it this far, and neither of them is willing to give up like that. They are both planning to fight to the bitter end just so they can both get into UA, which has led to both of them making bets on each other to kind of liven things up, as you may say. Kind of make it entertaining. Sweeten the pot, you might even say. Now, Izuku, after finally reaching the campus, he looks around and it's beautiful. It's immaculate. It's all he's ever dreamed of. But after Izuku has managed to reach the gate, he trips over his own foot and has both Bakugo and some other person grab him by the back of his collar. Now, when Izuku finally looks back, obviously one of the people is Bakugo, but the other person, it was a brunette girl. One who had actually tapped him instead of grabbed him, and Bakugo was like, "Whoa, bro, you suddenly don't weigh anything." And he turns to the girl and goes, "Does this have anything to do with your quirk?" And she says, "Oh, yeah, sorry. I have the ability to basically eliminate gravity from anything I touch. I figured it would be bad luck if he had fallen on his first day, so I kind of caught him." And Izuku, he thinks her, a lot. He thanks her a lot for having caught him. He admits it would have been incredibly embarrassing if he had basically face planted onto the ground, especially since he really, really does not want to make a fool of himself and all that. But after everything is said and done, he gets up. He thanks her with by bowing, and both Bakugo and Izuku start making their way inside, while Izuku is also at the same time telling the girl, "Hey, I hope you're the best," since he wanted to be polite. And after that, Izuku, the girl waves to the both of them while they're walking inside. And Bakugo, he playfully nudges Izuku, going, "Hey, check it out, Izuku. You're freshly walking into the school, and you're already got yourself a girl to ogle. How sweet, you little Izuku." And Izuku, he is embarrassed by his best friend saying such ridiculous things. He's like, "It's not even like that, man. It's not." But after proceeding to walk in, right, they're looking around and they're seeing the whole thing, right, and they can't wait to attend as actual students. Well, they go to the auditorium and they take their written exam. It was easy enough. I mean, Izuku has practiced for a very long time preparing himself mentally to take the exam in the first place, right? Well, after that's over, they proceed to go to a separate auditorium where the pro hero President Mike is telling the students about all the robots, right? The 1, 2, 3 pointers. And Izuku, he's staying silent for the most part, thinking to himself, what he's going to do, right? In terms of fighting robots. He knows that he needs to get something that can either bind them up or just kind of restrict them to a decent degree, right? Well, after President Mike announces about the robots, right, Ida stands up and he says on the pamphlet, there's 4 robots. If this is a error on UA's part, then it's very shameful. And he doesn't call out Izuku because he doesn't have a reason to. But, you know, President Mike explains that yes, the 4th robot is just worth nothing. It's 0 points. It's a eyesore obstacle, if anything else. And that they're going to pair everyone off into different testing sites, and that they're going to basically give them ample time to eat, get dressed, wear whatever they want to for the exam. If they think they have the time to eat, then they can eat and all that. But, you know, all of these students, they get themselves dressed to, you know, do this test, since they want to make sure that they're comfortable while they're running around looking for robots, right? Izuku, he's wearing just like some running shoes, some joggers, and a t-shirt, right? Like, he's not going for anything crazy. He's just going to wear what feels the most comfortable, since he doesn't want to make himself uncomfortable while he's doing the test. Especially since, like, he's going to be changing into his aliens, and it would be best for him to, like, not transform until he's already in and he's taking the test, right? Well, while he's sitting there, he sees the girl from before who had taken the gravity way to prevent him from falling. And he sees that she looks nervous, right? And Izuku, he starts making his way up to her before Ida stops him and says, "Hey, you, I saw what you were doing. You're going to go talk to that girl. She looks like she's preparing herself. Are you planning to distract her to make it to where she can't focus and she ends up failing?" And Izuku's like, no, that was not my intention at all. I just wanted to talk to her because she looked like she's nervous. I thought I could encourage her and give her some positive reinforcement, help her to feel comfortable and relax and not feel as tense. And Ida's like, "Likely story. I don't believe you, though." Because Ida's an uptight pain in the butt who doesn't want to listen to reason. Suddenly, the gate doors open, and Izuku, taking the opportunity, jets in. All the other students look at him and go, "Wait a minute, that's not fair." And President Mike says, "Well, what are you waiting for? There's no countdowns in a real battle. Go, get out there." But Izuku isn't paying attention. He's running as fast as he can down the street when a robot comes out from an alleyway. Izuku switches his watch into Diamond Head, and once he transforms, he reaches back and grabs the 2 crystals spiking out of his back, and he holds them in front of him while running like swords, basically driving these crystals into the robots and stabbing them. Each of these robots, like, once they're hit by a crystal, Izuku, like, makes sure to rip off the head before going for the next robot. Now, on a couple occasions, Izuku has seen multiple robots in a situation, which has led to him, like, taking his crystals and blasting them out towards the robots in quick succession. Mostly whenever they're 1-pointers. Whenever they're 2-pointers, he is a mix between shooting, slicing with his crystal swords, and creating crystal pathways that eventually reach under the opposing enemy and spike up, ripping them full of holes. Now, Izuku, he is trying his best to maneuver around, getting as many points as he can. But as he's going along, he feels like he's not going fast enough. So he hits the watch and he switches to another alien. This alien being Wild Mutt. Now, Izuku, even though he doesn't have eyes, he has a sensitive sense of hearing and sense of smell. And he can hear the mechanical mechanisms of the robots, and he's using his echolocation to basically see his whole surroundings. Now, he's basically moving at an increased rate, running around like a rabid dog, tearing up everything in sight. Completely biting off the heads of robots, tearing some to sunder, and everything in between. Basically, just creating a robot carnage in front of him. Now, as he's going, he tries to keep a nice, well-thought-out list of the numbers that he's got. And he's figuring that by this point, like with maybe about 4 minutes to spare, he's got about, say, 50 points. Now, Izuku, on a couple of occasions, he has made it to where he has jumped in and prevented a applicant from getting ambushed by a robot or two, but on the other hand, he's trying his hardest to make sure that everything is going smoothly. Now, in an attempt to also do a bit of damage control, he hits the watch marker and changes into Snarrow, taking the opportunity to use his bandage wrappings to wrap around some of the adjacent robots and pin them together, preventing them from making any trouble. He's trying to also show off his abilities to the teachers watching, because he has a feeling that with what sounds like drones up high in the air, that each of the teachers are watching very meticulously, trying to make sure that each of the students is earning their points and not actually hurting each other. Which, he has to admit, is a smart idea, but it's a definitive concept. Now, after using his wraps to save a couple of students, like wrap up a couple of robots, he finds himself trying to puzzle around with different concepts and figure out the best opportunities for each individual thing, right? Now, during one occasion, he decides that he's going to change into Upgrade and take over a 3-pointer, which I'm going to say Power Loader is not exactly happy about, because he's frustrated that this kid is destroying all of his robots without any hesitation, without even breaking a sweat. It's almost as if it's too easy for him. And mind you, Power Loader, when creating each of these robots, they were specially made to be incredibly difficult to fight, since the 1-pointers are speed attack based. The 2-pointers are a type of ranged enemy that shoots rubber bullets at the applicants to inhibit, slow down, basically do anything they can to cause a minor damage, while 3-pointers are a mix between both. They're fast and lean, but also have the ability to shoot projectiles out of their body to, like I said, hit other applicants. Now, as Izuku is using the 3-pointer to his advantage, I'm going to say in the observation room, all the teachers are completely gobsmacked at how effortlessly this kid is destroying each of these robots and basically making it look as if it's a piece of cake. Now, as things are starting to wrap up just a little bit more, the principal of UA, Nezu, says, "I want to test this kid out. Let's see what he's got." And he hits a big red button to release the 0-pointer, and as Izuku is completely filling each of these 2, 3, and 1-pointers, right, full of his now upgraded ammunition, which is twice as damaging as a rubber bullet. They're like these big old canister grenade looking things that completely blow a hole in each of the robots. And then he feels the ground shake from under him, and as he separates a part of his nanite body and looks around, he sees the 0-pointer, and he's like, "Ooh, shoot, that's a little bit out of my expertise level. Hell, I'm pretty sure that I don't have enough nanites on this body to cover that whole thing. Oh." And as Izuku is kind of pondering his options, right, he thinks to himself, I think I've had enough actually messing with this for today. I think I'm just gonna go, right? And as he's separating his nanites from the 3-pointer and ripping out circuitry while he's at it to fry it, he starts to kind of make his way towards the front, still looking like Upgrade, when he hears the sound of someone crying out in pain. Now Izuku, he turns around and he sees the brunette girl pinned under some rubble, and he's like, oh shoot. Having seen her. And I'm going to say that Izuku is not entirely happy about how this is proceeding so far. Especially since this is not exactly the most ideal situation for him. Now, as he's running forward trying to get to the girl, he switches to accelerate to speed up his movement, right? Getting him to the girl faster before changing back and then shifting into upchuck and eating a bunch of debris before shooting it at the zero pointer's head, which doesn't really do much. He gets frustrated by that fact and he thinks to himself, shoot, I don't want to use that one. It would cause too much destruction. Not to mention, it's kind of really, really over the top. And as he's like trying to help the girl get out from under the rubble, right? The zero pointer raises its hand, and as it's bringing it down, Izuku's like, screw this, and he shifts the watch over to the one alien he wasn't wanting to turn into today because of the fact that it quite literally can cause a lot of damage. And he hits the watch down, and the transformation, it takes hold of him. He starts to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow until he's way too big. And basically, as way big, he's like incredibly tall. And like his whole body is about as big as the zero pointer. I'm gonna say in like for this instance. And Izuku, he uses way big to grab the zero pointer, right? And like lift it off the ground before finally throwing it at... Actually, no, he doesn't throw it. He crushes its head and pushes it backwards away from Ochako, right? Before hitting the marker on his chest once more to shrink all the way back down to his original form and helping the girl out. Now, while Izuku's doing this, Ochako, she's just amazed at like all the stuff he's done with this device in his hand, right? And she's like, "What are you?" And Izuku's like, "I'm just your average run-of-the-mill hero in training. Nothing special." And he finally gets her off from under the rubble, and he throws her arm around his shoulder, and he starts to help her walk out. At the gate, he's met by Recovery Girl, who asks if either of them are injured. And he tells her no, he's fine, but she appears to have a messed up ankle. And Recovery Girl proceeds to kiss Ochako to repair her ankle and gives her a couple of gummies to recover her strength, right? And Izuku, he helps her to sit down next to the front gate as he like tells her bye, right? And that he hopes that they both got in. Now, as Izuku is going, he is saying to himself, man, I used a lot of aliens today. Whew, that wore me out. But at least I helped that girl and a couple of the other applicants. Preceding this, Izuku goes to find his best friend, Bakugo, and then after finding him, they both proceed to go home. And that's where I'm leaving this part of What If Deku Had Alien Powers. I hope you all enjoyed, and as I go, don't forget,